Hi, this is Rachelle with Journal Life's Journey, and I'm going to show you how I make the faux leather look bits and pieces that I have used in some of the journals that I've made here on the channel. It's really very simple, and if you are a crafter, you probably have everything you need to do this. I'm pretty sure this will work with any paper, but I tend to use craft paper because it requires less coloring, less work. And I have 3 different types of craft paper, and I didn't realize they were so different. Normally I use the craft paper from Michaels, which is this. This is 65-pound cardstock, and it comes from Michaels. So I've taken one of those sheets and cut it into quarters. And if you look here, they're even within this pack, the papers are different. One side is a different color. Look at that. So you got 2 different colors here. Okay, but that's the Michaels paper, and I cut those in quarters. The rest of this I cut into 4x6. Then to compare, I have this Kraft Cardstock by Pen & Gear. This is from Walmart. It says 80 pound, and it feels about, well, no, it is a little heavier than the 65 pound. So I guess it is actually 80 pound. That's an option, and this is what this looks like. I didn't cut this one into quarters. I cut this into 2 4x6, and then these are the offcuts that were left. So that is the Pen & Gear. Then I have this from Hobby Lobby by the Paper Studio. This is 12x12. I'm sure I didn't pay full price. I try never to do that. And this cuts perfectly into 4x6 pieces. So I got 6 4x6s out of this. And just to be thorough, I'm going to try this one as well. I haven't used this before, nothing this heavy. This is 110-pound cardstock, so it's extra heavyweight according to the Paper Studio. Of course, I didn't pay that either, but I want to test this one out also. And this is what this paper looks like compared to the others. Okay. So this looks more like the chipboard that I have. It looks more like chipboard, not necessarily craft, even though this says craft. It looks more like chipboard. So this is the chipboard that I use for book covers, things like that. To me, they're very much the same. This is just a little lighter weight, and I could probably maybe use 3 layers of this to make a cover, actually. Where I usually tend to use 2 layers of this if I want a nice thick cover. If I'm okay with the thin cover, then I just do the single layer. Okay, anywho, so I'm going to cut this in quarters, and then we will get started. These are my embossing folders. I just recorded a video showing how I was organizing them. This is probably not going to be their final home because I don't like the way they're fitting in here. I even made myself a catalog of all the different embossing folders that I have using the packaging that these were in. Because I am working on a special project, I'm going to use the 3D embossing folder that has the skulls by Tim Holtz. It's one of my favorites. This is what it looks like. So 3D, that means that the impression is going to be considerably deeper than a regular embossing folder. Okay. And then where's my other favorite that I like to use for that leather look? This one from the Paper Studio. This is the one that I've used the most to create the look. Okay, so let's set this aside. I did recently learn that I should moisten my paper. So I am going to spray the papers that I plan to use, and I'm going to use one of each kind. And I think that's it, right? 4 different ones. All right, so let's spray them all generously. Okay, let's wet up the back of that one since the other ones will be wet on both sides. All right, let's dry that up. I think I'm going to do 2 of each. So that way I can show you the 3D, and then I can also show you the other one as well. Yeah, let's do that. So that's 1, 2, 3. This is the 4th paper. So let's wet them up again. Okay, so off to the die cutting machine and I will be back. All right, and we are back. Again, these are the 2 embossing folders that I used, and I did 1 on each page. So these are the skulls. They don't look like much yet. And I haven't tried this with the skulls specifically. I have used black paper and this wax. I have it in gold and silver. I've used that with this on the black cardstock, but I haven't tried it with the craft. All right, but these are the 4 different looks that I got with the craft cardstock that I have. This is what the backs look like. And I think A2 is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So this one is A2, and I think the Tim Holtz 3D is 4 by 6. Not that any of that matters, but yeah, that's what they look like. They're still a little damp. They were pretty much almost dry by the time I started running them through the machine, but they were still damp. Okay, and then this is the design that I have used before. And this is what they look like. I don't know which way is which. So I'm just going to turn them both ways. Okay. So that's what they look like. And I'm pretty sure this is the extra heavyweight version. All right. So that's the first step. Emboss the paper. Then you're going to need your choice of ink. I typically use Distress ink in Vintage Photo, or I'll also use Walnut Stain, or a combination of the 2. All right, I pulled out Gathered Twigs. This is my Walnut Stain, and this is the Vintage Photo, of course. All right, so we're going to start with the swirls. And I'm going to use the makeup brushes for this. So that one's for Walnut Stain. This one is Vintage Photo. Do I have a Gathered Twigs? Yep, I sure do. And Gathered Twigs. Okay. So I have marked them. Let's start with Vintage Photo. And they're still a little damp, but I'm not going to worry about that too much. And then I just lightly go over them. I don't try to get down in the grooves. The main thing I want to do is hit the embossed areas, the raised areas. So this is a little too light for my taste. Let's move on to Walnut Stain. Okay, that's not working out so great. So let's try a dauber. Walnut Stain. I can't remember what I used, if I used a dauber or if I used a brush. I think I used the dauber. Okay, so the brushes are a no. Use your dauber. And the rounded one seems to work pretty good. So you're just trying to hit those raised areas to make those stand out a little bit more. And I'm sticking with the Walnut Stain. See how much better that is? So these, yeah, no, not for this. They're too light. So that one came out a whole lot better. Let's see if I can touch this one up a little bit. Okay, then let's do another one. And you know, some of the issue I had with this one might be actually the paper. This isn't the paper that I usually use. This is the paper that I normally use. So that could have something to do with it as well. So that's what that one looks like. Just hit it a little bit more around the edges. And then this is the heavyweight, extra heavyweight. All right, now let's try these. Again, this is my first time doing this with the skulls. Let's see how it goes. Ooh, not bad. I might hit this with a little black too. Let's see how it goes. So those are the skulls. I'm not really all that happy with how these look. I think they work a lot better on the black paper using the luster wax stuff, using this. But we're gonna make this work. Let's see, let's try my dye ink and let's try just rubbing it over. Let's see what kind of look we get with that. This ink pad is no good for stamping anymore, but it does have a little ink left. So I kind of like that. I think it could stand to be a lot more grungy too. There's that one. All right, so now that we played around with that, let's play around with this a little bit and see if we can get a little more darkness going in there. I don't think that makes that big of a difference, but let's do all of them that way. I wonder what would happen if I use the oxide. I just bought some black oxide ink. We're not going to find out today. We'll try that another time. Let me know if you want to test out some oxides using this method. Maybe adding a little water to the mix after they've been inked. So I guess I could go a little darker on these. Let's see what gathered twigs will do. Yeah, that adds a little depth to it. And that helps bring it out a little bit more. So maybe taking the ink pad directly to it when you want to add the darker color. I was winging it when I originally did these, so it has been a while. All right, so this is what they're looking like at this point. Now, the big thing that I do is I use Mod Podge, and in this instance I don't use my DIY Mod Podge. I think I put a little bit too much on here. I don't use the DIY Mod Podge. I use the real deal Mod Podge, and I just go over that, and that gives it a sheen that makes them a little more sturdy, and then I make them into whatever I want to use them as. I've used them as flaps. I've used them as like straps or buckles, or straps and buckles, all of those types of things. So I'm going to grab the Mod Podge and a brush and a mat, and we can get started on that part of the process. Alrighty, let's start with the skulls. Do them first. So I'm just using the regular matte Mod Podge. It doesn't really dry matte. If you want matte, then I suggest using matte medium. I have used the silicone spatulas, something like this, for stuff like this, but I'm finding that a brush works a lot better. It's more cleanup, but it gets down in those little grooves in different spots and just works a lot better. And I don't want to wipe too much because the ink is not permanent ink. It is activated by water, and there's water in the Mod Podge. So I just kind of quickly put that on. Try not to move it around too much. If you don't want your ink to move, then it's probably better to use an archival ink or a more permanent type ink. And I could probably add a little water to this Mod Podge. It's a little thick. Let's try it. Yeah. That makes the ink move around a little bit more, but it'll be fine. Now that looks green. I hope it doesn't dry green. For this last one, I'm going to try my DIY Mod Podge. All right, let's try this last one with this. I think it might work a little differently. We'll see how it turns out. Let's see if I can dry these. Pretty much want to let them air dry, but I'm just going to hit one or two with the heat tool and see what happens. Like these that have a lot of Mod Podge on them. All right, I've done the heating tool a bit. Now, this is the thing. My DIY Mod Podge dries flat, so there's no shine to that. And I want the shine. This is still, some of these are still a little bit wet. This is mostly dry. But I can already tell it's going to be completely matte. And I don't want that for this particular project. So once these dry completely, I'm going to go back over them with the regular Mod Podge. This is what the pieces that I use the regular Mod Podge are looking like. And I'm quite happy with it. I don't think I would do this color paper again. I think this is the Walmart one. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I don't really care for that craft color, how it looks. See if you can tell, this is a more rich color. This is more dusty and gray looking. It just depends on the project though. This one I think is one that I used my Mod Podge on, and I might have used a little of the other Mod Podge too. So I'm going to end up going over that one again. This one has a beautiful shine to it. See? So those little yellow spots are where it's still wet, but I am liking the way that looks. Okay. So this one I need to go over again, and all of these. So I'm going to do that real quick. Let's add a little more Mod Podge to my mat and hit these up one more time. All right, so this time I'm gonna let them dry naturally while I go clean my brush And then once they're dry, we will come back and see what kind of leather looks we got going on here. I probably should have hit these again too, but I think I'll leave them alone. I also think some of the difference is in the paper, how the paper is treated, the type of paper it is. This one takes the Mod Podge very well if you want a shiny Mod Podge. And again, I think this is the Recollections Michael's paper. It seems to do the best. I like the look the best, and I'm pretty sure that is what I used on the other projects that I did, was the Michael's Recollections, because these other papers that I'm using, they are fairly new, but since I've been crafting, I have been using the craft paper from Michael's. Okay, let everything dry, we'll be back. So they are dry now, and this is what they look like. And I am happy with them. I can use them again to make closures. I can use them to make pockets, any number of things. And if you need something bigger, longer, you would emboss one part and then emboss the other part. So you would put one piece in the folder, then the other half of the paper or whatever you're using in the folder. Oh, that's a little difficult to explain. It doesn't sound right, but that's what you would do. Okay, and then these are more skulls. Then this one. And I think this is my favorite. It really turned out the best of the skulls. Okay, so that is it. That is how I make the pieces that look kind of leathery. I wouldn't say they look like leather, but maybe. And you can kind of work them, make them a little more pliable, depending on what you're using them for. So yeah, that's how you do it. Basically, you need some ink, Mod Podge, and an embossing folder. And there are ways to use an embossing folder without using the die cutting machine. And there's videos out there to show you how to do that. So that's it. I'm happy with them. I can do a little touch up here and there, depending on how I plan to use them. And I may play around with doing some Christmas inspired versions for upcoming journals. I should be starting Christmas soon. Anywho, I hope this was helpful. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give me a thumbs up, and you may be interested in these other videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll holler at y'all next time. Bye.